For more on charitable contributions on Giving Tuesday and beyond, I'm joined by Doug White. He's an advisor to nonprofits and philanthropies and has written 5 books on them. He's also the former director of the Columbia University Masters in Nonprofit Management program. Welcome to the show.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
So talk about the current state of charitable giving and how it's evolved over the last decade or so.
A lot has changed in the last decade, and the current state brings us to a big problem, and that is, I think you just mentioned a moment ago, some of the smaller donors are dropping out, and a lot of the dollars that we're getting nowadays are coming from the larger donors. And so we're seeing a bigger gap between the larger donors and the smaller donors. Even though the dollar amount has gone up over the last few years, we are now over $400 billion in the United States per year. But that represents more and more large donations and fewer smaller donations, and that's something to keep an eye on.
Now, we know that companies, after they took all our money from Black Friday shopping, some of them are actually giving back on Giving Tuesday. We saw that T-Mobile is using a hashtag campaign to donate meals. Facebook and PayPal are matching charitable donations from customers. Just how valuable is it to get some of these big brands involved for Giving Tuesday?
The big brands, let's keep in mind that the corporations have one objective, and that is to make a profit. And part of the calculation that they have is the way they are seen or perceived in their communities. So they're going to be very large players in the philanthropic process. It's important for charities to take advantage of that desire on the part of corporations around the world so that they can get a part of that largesse that comes in. As you say, we are on the tail end of a very, very large process of spending money, and the corporations that have benefited from that are looking at this as a way to give back and to make sure that people see that they are a community player.
Now, on top of that, we also know that while wealth is growing in this country, so is wealth disparity. So for people who aren't able to contribute financially, what are some more creative and effective ways to make a difference outside of monetary donations?
Good question, but before we go there, I just want to make sure that everyone knows that no matter the size of the donation, even if it's small compared to what you see in the headlines, it's an important contribution because every contribution helps, even though we don't see it that way. But what other ways can we help charities? Well, we can volunteer. We can give our time. There are so many opportunities. The question is, are the charities in a position to accept volunteerism in the proper way? Because that's a large process, but there are a lot of opportunities for people. And so if you have a cause, if you have a charity, if you have a purpose that you want to help, call that organization up and say, I'd like to take advantage of volunteering, because in the United States, we've monetized that, and it's almost as much of a value to charities as are the actual cash and other kinds of donations.
So then how do organizations ensure better giving and participation rates outside of this big Giving Tuesday, since that's when a lot of people tend to donate to really take advantage of these charitable donation tax laws?
This is true. This is the beginning of the charitable giving season, or it's meant to be that. And so what does that mean? It's the end of the year, which is to say it's the end of the tax year. So is tax a large part of the equation? It is a part of the equation. There's no doubt about that. It's not the driving force behind all of the donations, believe me, but it is, we can't ignore it. It's a large part of it. So the amount of giving during this period of time, not just on this day really isn't, to me anyway, the way we measure charitable giving. It's a symbol of being able to reach beyond ourselves, reach beyond our communities, reach beyond our country, reach into the peoples of the world to say, we are one. So symbolically, it's so important. But that said, we have another couple of months yet to go with, I think, some fairly heavy charitable giving. And that said, during the entire year, charitable giving is fairly robust here, at least in the United States.
So one question to ask is, with so many worthy causes vying for our attention, is there any sense of giving fatigue?
Yes. And I think in the United States, I'll go on record as saying that there are too many charities. What I mean by that is not that they're doing a bad job, but there are so many opportunities that duplicate one another that donors can get confused. And even today on my email, on my texts, I saw probably, and I don't exaggerate here, 3,000 or 4,000 giving day opportunities, or it was just enormously overwhelming. So yes, there's going to be fatigue. That said, charities need to stay in front of their potential consumers, their potential donors. They have to stay in front of them in order to get their message across.
And so just quickly, how can we get more international growth and participation in some of these, not just the big charitable giving days, but beyond that?
Well, I think it's important. That question is extremely important, and the answer to that is that it's not going to be easy and it's not going to be fast. We have to make sure that we have a culture internationally where we say these questions are important. This is the way to help humanity. Remember, the definition, what philanthropy means, is love of humankind. That idea knows no boundary. And so when we talk about philanthropy, we're talking about truly an international movement, and we have to do everything we can, step by step, as long as it takes, to make sure that we're doing as much as we can to improve the state of humanity in the world.
It's certainly very important to remember that all year round. Thank you so much. Doug White there, author and advisor to nonprofits and philanthropists.